to increase. And the reality is it can happen in just a moment, just in a 3-minute breakout room, in a Zoom conversation, in a room like this, we can increase our energy. So I'm going to take you down the path of, you heard a little bit about my background in practice and in research. And I want to share with you what drove me as both a practitioner and a researcher to focus on vitality and take you through some of the research that I've done in this area. And I want to create lots of space for questions. So if you have a question during the talk, I know Tatiana or Stuart will let me know and just say, hey, so I'm going to keep sharing my, we talked about what lights you up. I want to tell you a little bit about my journey. One of the things that I saw in positive psychology was that it was an underexplored idea or concept in research. And so I really wanted to make sure that I dove into this body of research for multiple reasons. Number one, I thought it was something that we could really, really learn from as both practitioners and researchers. And number two, it was so important in everything I was doing with my clients. And so it was an essential thing to me, not only to learn as a researcher, but to keep enhancing and helping my clients with. So a little bit about my research journey with Vitality. I really started my journey in 2022 and have continued to do research in this area. And I'll take you through some of these studies and what I've learned along the way. So, as a practitioner, one of the things that I talk to my clients about continuously is the distinction between time versus energy. Unfortunately, we hear a lot about work-life balance in terms of time. But the reality is that time is not a renewable resource, but energy is. And so when I think about how do we really focus on work-life balance or work-life integration and really be able to be at our best, it's about understanding that energy is a renewable resource and that we can find different levels of our own capabilities and capacity if we focus on energy versus time. So this is actually a worksheet that I use with all of my clients. I will drop it in the chat so that you all have access to it. But when we think about what energizes you, I like to break it down for clients in these 4 areas, really mind, body, heart, and spirit. What intellectually nourishes you, what nourishes you, what emotionally nourishes you. And then when I talk about spirit, I don't talk about necessarily spirituality or religion. I really want people to think about what connects you to your greatest self or something greater than yourself. So this is something that I use in my practice whenever I'm starting with a client to really understand not only for myself as the coach, but for them to start thinking about this time energy distinction and starting to think about what nourishes them. What does it look like when they feel refueled, re-energized? So as I started in my research, and I'm just going to share with you, these are some of the things that nourish me and part of filling out this worksheet. I really wanted to understand, how do we measure this? How do we look at this internal resource from a research perspective and learn more about it and learn how it gets applied? The first thing I saw when I did my research in vitality and really looked at all the literature is that most of the literature focused on the emotional side or the psychological side of vitality. And I wanted to make sure, as a starting point, the physical side was also included. So one of the first steps I took was redefining a measurement tool that really allowed me to look at 3 of those areas: the physical, the psychological, and emotional as 3 separate factors so that I could start looking at vitality in my research. Then I started to look at, okay, if now I have a measurement tool of vitality, what does that mean as far as how that vitality is utilized in leadership? And I did a study that, honestly, I will tell you, when I did this first study, Stuart knows this well, my mind was exploded because I was looking at vitality and I thought, well, I know intuitively from working with clients that when we look at well-being really the pathways are the antecedents to vitality. And positive relational energy is that energy exchange that we really transfer to a person. And I knew in leadership, right, if we had a lot of vitality and we were transferring that energy, that's what the whole line was going to look like. And so all my hypotheses were, well, if there's all this wonderful well-being, it's going to create all this amazing vitality, and then these leaders are going to be able to transfer all this energy. And I got my data back and I was shocked. Shocked when I got my data back because that's not actually what the data shared. The data actually showed, and it took me a while to realize this. I went through a lot of hours of looking at the data before I recognized that just because a leader is highly vital doesn't mean they're going to transfer that vitality. I think we've all had that experience with a very vital leader that isn't transferring their positive relational energy. And unfortunately, we would put that person potentially in the toxic leader category, where that person is actually a vitality vampire. They're taking other people's vitality. They're not utilizing their vitality and sharing it with others. And so that was, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. That was one of the first surprises as I was looking at this concept of vitality, that when I looked at the data, I realized, oh, yeah, I completely forgot about this concept of toxic leadership. I didn't realize that that would come out so clearly in the quantitative data, and it did. And so what I recognized through that study was leadership and sharing our energy is a choice. And we can be highly vital, but that doesn't mean just because we're highly vital that we're giving and serving others. Now, some of us, of course, that's what we're doing, and that's what we want to do, and that's why we're in the roles that we're in every single day. But that's not everyone. So I want to pause there and see what questions are coming up for you as I share a little bit of this research. I'll keep going with my research if there aren't questions. What I just want to hear is anything coming up as you think about energy and you think about leadership.
It's quite probable. Hi, this is Srihari from Hyderabad. It's quite probable that a leader may be dangerously energetic, but when the energy is channelized in the wrong direction, it may have a negative impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting as well in what I've seen through my work, not only in research and practice, is sometimes we assume that someone is deficient in leadership skills, but in actuality, they're deficient in their vitality and their energy. So it is a really fine line. And some people are going to be, unfortunately, not wired for servant leadership or not willing to give. And there are other people that are just going to be completely depleted and not showing up at their best. And so really understanding that and the nuance of that in the data is hard to parse out, but is another reason why I continue to study this concept and want to continue to understand not only what are all the antecedents to vitality, but how is it used and how do we see that transforming leaders and leadership?
We have a question in the chat.
Absolutely.
What about when you share too much of your own vitality or energy? Will it be exhausting?
Absolutely, right? And that's why it's so important that we understand what are the antecedents, meaning what do we see as the precursors to vitality? And my research really builds on Dr. Donaldson's and really the PERMA plus 4 that I know you've already started to learn about, those 9 pathways of well-being are what we see as the critical antecedents to vitality. So when you are somebody who naturally gives and wants to give in your leadership, in your life, and is giving of energy, it is so important that you start to think about what are those 9 pathways and how am I caring for myself and replenishing myself so that I'm not getting to a place of burnout.
चल मैं क्लास में चली जाऊं
Ma'am, I also resonate with the findings of your research because we have also conducted a research wherein we find that servant leadership influence happiness at work among employees. The leader's servant
Yes.
leadership style. And in terms, then we find out that it also increases their well-being. So
Yes.
leader forward vitality actually makes a difference.
It absolutely does. Thank you so much. I would love to see your research. It sounds like it's very aligned with what I've been studying.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Jamie, I have a question. Like in terms of leaders' well-being, what key ingredients or antecedents to you see to leaders' well-being so that we can move forward on that servant leadership and vitality?
Absolutely. Well, I feel like that's like the perfect lead in. Thank you so much for that transition. I'm going to share my next study because it really focused on those antecedents. So I'll share a couple more things around my research. Well, here it is, the PERMA plus 4. So what I found in my own research is a couple of things. Number one, I really looked at this as the inputs and really wanted to understand at a detailed level, okay, so if we're helping leaders, what are the ways not only do we want to make sure they're building their vitality, but also I wanted to understand what are the hidden drains potentially in leadership that we might not be talking about on a regular basis. So I talked a little bit about positive relational energy and that transfer of energy, but what I looked at in my own research is, okay, well, if leaders are transferring that energy and we want to make sure that that's happening because we know that positive relational energy is 3 times more impactful than information and influence alone. What are potential drains here? Well, we know that self-control is a part of leadership and is draining to vitality. Emotional labor, emotional dissonance, and that energy transference. And I always love to give leaders an idea of what I mean from emotional labor. And so I often show them this emotion map. And I just ask them, I say, hey, I want you to think of a challenging moment that you've recently faced in your leadership. And I want you to think about where on this map you were. And so they usually pick somewhere unfortunately in the blue area. And then I asked them the question, and what were you projecting to the organization, your team during that time? And it's usually on the right side of this, in the green or in the yellow. And that's how I explain emotional labor, because in psychology, we study terms like self-control and emotional labor and emotional dissonance. But in practice, it's not something that is readily available to them in their language. And so I like to teach leaders, hey, I want to give you language for potential drains so that you know what's going on. And when we are expressing emotions that are different than the way we feel, that can drain your energy. So I wanted to look at both sides of the equation. What fuels you? What are some of the things that really nourish that vitality? And what are the potential drains? For this one, and I'll bounce through these since I already talked about them. For this study, I really focused on a qualitative study. So I interviewed leaders across the United States. I interviewed 20 CEOs of Fortune 1000 companies, and I did really a semi-structured interview around what it felt to be highly vital and what were the ways that they felt when they were emotionally, physically, and psychologically drained. And just a little bit about the sample size. But what I think is so interesting about this research is not only did I see those expected themes come out, but the drains to leader vitality also included loss of job control, the mindsets of others when they're negative or they're self-oriented, and then the isolation of leadership. So these are all drains that I learned about through my research and were validated through that qualitative study. Now, you asked about the inputs, the antecedents. And what I found is that 7 of the 9 pathways were talked about. But again, there were new emergent themes that came out in my research. The opposite of lack of job control, creating space for thinking, being organized, being prepared. Of course, vacation and non-work time came out. These are things that help increase that vitality. And what I wanted to share just overall, when we look at all of the participants, what I think is so important from this, and part of the reason we started the way that we did around taking a moment to connect, is that relationships were talked about as vitality expanders with every single leader I talk to. And so this is very consistent in the research. It's really about how do we make sure that we have those high quality connections. I know that you've had the opportunity to hear many other professors speak and talk about concepts around high quality connections and love in the workplace, but my research emphasizes this as well, that really having those connections in our lives is the number one increaser of vitality. And so we see things like obviously achievement and overall health and mindset be important. You do see, that part of my sample was of CEOs, so not many talked about economic security. Positive emotion was not talked about as much as I would have expected. So it made me recognize that there's a real opportunity to make leaders aware of the importance of positive emotion, the importance of love, the importance of gratitude and joy, and making sure that we really help people tap into that and understand how important that is. So I will pause there again and just see if any questions come up from me sharing that study with you all.
Yeah, I would like to, it's not a question maybe, but in science, we study that energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can only be transformed. So does it apply on vitality as well?
Ask me one more time. Does what apply to vitality? I heard the end, but not the beginning.
Sorry. I said the energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. That's the science fundamental that we study. Does it apply
Yeah.
the same on vitality as well?
Yes, it does. Because what we're talking about in the purest form, when I'm talking about vitality, is I'm talking about the 4 factors of vitality. I'm going to show you that 4th factor in just a moment. But I'm really talking about the mental, the physical, the energy within us. And so, yes, I would say it applies as well.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to share my final study with you. No, okay, I should not say final. The one that I most recently did, but I will continue this research because this is obviously near and dear to my heart to continue this research. So want to just share, I hope that you see from everything we've talked about, self-care is not selfish. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. And the qualitative research really brought this to life. And what I saw is that when we are highly vital, what we see are different leadership patterns, different leadership behaviors, including more positive relational energy, more curiosity, more ability to create a positive environment, more encouraging. Where low vitality, you see everything on the right side. And I saw 8 different themes emerge: engaging versus disengaged, high capacity versus low capacity, visionary versus myopic, inclusive versus exclusive. So as I started, I shared with you how important really positive leadership is, and the importance of thinking about how do we build into thriving organizations where leaders burn bright without burning out. And hopefully you're starting to see that when we care for our well-being, when we care for those 9 pathways, it gives us that vitality that then can be utilized for positive leadership. So the study I wanted to conclude with is I really wanted to expand my research, not just to leaders, but to workers, and really see if this concept of vitality applied more broadly. But I wanted to include the spiritual vitality element. And the way that we define spiritual vitality is really about that connection to your greatest self, or something greater to yourself, or greater than yourself. And what we looked at is actually, this was a quantitative study, and we we actually did it at 2 different time points. So we were able to show directionality and really show the Perma plus 4 as the antecedents to vitality. And we were able to show vitality as a 4-factor model with the mind, body, heart, and spirit is really how I like to say it, but we can say it more precisely with the physical, the psychological, the emotional pieces to this. So this was something that I was really excited to be able to not only apply more broadly, but also to have those 4 factors included, and lots more work to be done, a lot more international studies that need to be done around this, but we've been able to really start to show what vitality is composed of so that we can continue to study it even more extensively. So future research directions, I think I already shared some of these already, but we want to continue to look at this chain of the Perma plus 4 vitality, positively energizing leadership. We recently have been able to expand on Kim Cameron's work and positively energizing leadership and come up with a scale around this so that we continue to do more and more research, do longitudinal, cross-cultural studies here, and really start to understand vitality in even more of a deep way. So I don't think we need more burnout plans. I think we need more vital leaders. And leadership isn't just about vision or strategy. It's about the energy to be able to give and serve, not from an empty vessel, but from a truly abundant vessel. And so I want to stop managing burnout and start engineering vitality. And that is really my work and my purpose around my research, but also around my practice. So I will stop my sharing here and see what other questions come up. I think we have about 10-15 minutes for questions if I'm looking at the time right.
You
Jimmy,
might
may I ask?
check the chat again. Yeah.
I've heard you saying that you cannot serve from an empty vessel. You also said that self-care is not selfish. I'm reminded of Madame Curie, the only lady who has got 2 Nobel Prizes. The only family of Curies who have got 5 Nobel Prizes. Madame Curie died because of her research. Her husband died because of her research, of his research. Her eldest daughter, as well as son-in-law died because of their research. Do you think they were careless? Do you think because nobody dares to even enter that room where she has conducted her research because the residue of the radioactive substance will remain for another 1500 years. Do you think the Curie family were careless about themselves? Because the whole world has benefited because of their contribution to the society at large.
But I want to make sure I understand the question. Do I think people have been careless with their energy and that's why we're in an epidemic of burnout? Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Okay. No, I don't. I don't think people have been careless. I think that, and this is going to get more philosophical than research based, but I think as human beings, we are wired for connection and we're wired for relationship, and that human beings are good at heart. And I think that we want to give and give and give because that's how we are and how we're meant to be in relationship with each other. And I think what we don't necessarily understand completely is our own replenishment cycles and how we make sure that we're replenishing ourselves. So I think it's natural for us to give and maybe not know the boundaries of where that line goes into burnout. I think a lot of people on this call probably have a very servant mentality, and it's why that you're in the profession you're in. And so it's not about being careless as much as it's not about, I don't think this is something we're taught on a regular basis around how do we care for our own energy and how do we make sure that we create the boundaries we need so that we don't get to those places of burnout. So I think it's less about carelessness and more about education.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. All
Yes.
the researchers, I think they are very much passionate about their research. And it is the passion and purpose which drives them, and they forget about their health, the psychological vitality which you are talking about. So maybe in case of Marie Curie, because she was so much interested in contributing to society through her research, she almost forgot about her health or her family's health.
Yeah, Shapiro, thank you for the presentation. This is Srini from India. So I have a question. So we are doing a work which we are studying about empowering leadership and individual proactive vitality management. So we are studying, how does this empowering leadership can actually promote this proactive vitality management of an employees as a subordinate. So it's very
Yeah.
interesting to look at your studies talks about, leader vitality has an impact on the follower. So I'm just a bit curious now, since you talked about servant leadership and we are talking about empowering leadership. Can you throw some light on, because we are referring the vitality management of the subordinate, not the vitality of leader assets.
Yeah, I think that most research does focus there, right? When we look at a lot of the well-being research, it is focused on the worker, not necessarily the leader. And that was something I saw in the positive leadership literature was it was so focused on how do we increase the vitality or the well-being of workers, but not necessarily how do we make sure the leader is well themselves. And so that's where I actually think the biggest gap was, which is why I stepped into that body of research. And so, yes, they work beautifully together. When we have a vital leader that's giving their energy, it's going to increase the people that are reporting to them energy as well and their well-being. But we have to make sure that the leader is energized as well. And I think that's where my really focus.
Thank you.
Jamie, I have a simple
I
question.
have
Probably.
a question.
There were multiple
Hello.
questions. I love questions, by the way. So this makes me
Yeah.
very grateful.
What happens when leader consider himself vital and try to emit positive energy, but followers, and team members, some take it positively, some take it negatively. Like in LMX, in leader-member relationship, leader is well-meaning and trying to spread positive energy, but members take positive energy or they become aloof. And that in my research has come up that those who are in positive side, who have received positive energy of the leader, they are reporting high happiness, whereas those who are reporting low LMX, they are having low happiness.
I completely understand, and so much of that is based on relationship, right? When we look at LMX, what I want to share is when we talk about positively energizing leadership and positively energizing leadership behaviors, we're actually talking about things not like, hey, I'm going to give you all this energy. We're actually talking about listening. We're talking about gratitude. The behaviors that I'm studying with relational energy are very focused on is that person seen, heard, and acknowledged. So it's a little bit different in some of the other behaviors and some of the other research modalities around leadership. It's a little bit more behavior based in that sense. And so I'm looking at behaviors like, are you being inclusive? Are you creating a sense of belonging? Those are some of the things where there are just fundamental needs of meaning and mattering in the workplace. And so it's a little bit different. I think sometimes when I talk about positively energizing leadership, people are thinking that I'm talking about a leader that just comes in and is like, hi, it's so great to see you. And let's, and that's not at all what I'm really trying to express. I'm really trying to express the behaviors that create capacity for another human being.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think you said there are some questions in the, that I think we got to them. Great.
Good morning, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Your research is really very, very nice and a hot research topic, a demanding one in today's world. I have one question. Like, do you feel like a spiritual upliftment of a human being can add to his leadership and rather effective leadership in the workplace, like in sense of if a person does a meditation or some listen to spiritual talks or go through the texts can add to some do some value addition in that person's character.
Well, I'm going to answer from my personal perspective and tell you that I 100% believe yes, I meditate every single day, and my spirituality is a huge part of my world. What I want to study more of is this concept of spiritual vitality and what that means. And I want to make sure it applies to everyone, meaning that wherever you feel connected to your best self or something greater than yourself, that we're able to look at that. So that might be taking a walk in nature. It might be taking a moment to, look at your dog and see what that instills in you. And so, yes, in what I see in my own practice and from that initial research and adding that concept of spiritual vitality, yes, I can answer your question really strongly. A lot more research needs to be done in that area as far as I'm concerned, and really understanding that and understanding the landscape of what it means to be connected to something greater than ourselves and our best self, and how that expresses in our leadership.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jamie, you met a lot of CEOs, and
Yes.
did you find them very self-absorbed and all into themselves only?
No, I feel like I have some of the most amazing clients ever, and they are 100% focused on building the right kind of companies with the right kind of cultures. But I will tell you, someone's not going to hire me if they're super self-absorbed. I'm not that type of coach. And as soon as they meet me, they're going to be like, no, thank you. So I have to say the people that I work with are people who are really, really focused on creating thriving cultures and environments. And so, yes, there are absolutely narcissistic, self-absorbed CEOs out there. They just happen to not be my clients, and they're not people that are ever want to hire me, because they'll get on a phone call with me and within 30 seconds we will not be a match. So yeah, unfortunately those people do exist. I think, in my research, when the light bulb went off around, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about toxic leadership. I didn't think about narcissistic leadership. I didn't even I didn't even account for that in my hypotheses. So when it hit me, I feel like it hit me like a freight train in the data. I was like, oh, right. Leadership is a choice. Sharing our energy is a choice. And that's not what everybody does. And so, again, sometimes that's because they're just completely depleted. But sometimes it's because they're in that category of vitality vampire, and they aren't somebody who is looking to enhance the lives and the communities that they serve.
One more question, Jamie. When those
Yeah.
leaders that you meet and they are very good at sharing their energy, are
Yeah.
they aware that they're sharing their energy or it happens?
Sometimes what I find when I start working with a client who shares their energy a lot is they often are unaware that that's what's going on, and they come home and they sometimes are incredibly depleted. So when the concept of positive relational energy first came out, it was thought about in the sense of, if you're sharing your positive relational energy with somebody, that's coming right back to you, right? And so that it's this beautiful broaden and build, and it's just going in an upward spiral. And what I've been able to show in my research is that's not always true for leaders. That leaders are often sharing their energy, but they're not getting that reciprocal energy back. And so what I found with a lot of leaders is they were really giving a lot, but then they would go home completely depleted and not understand why. And so some of the comments I would hear are things like, Jamie, I feel like I'm doing great at work. I feel like I'm really building the kind of culture I want, but I come home and I have no energy for my wife or son. Or I feel like I just want to go to bed and I don't have the capacity to listen to my husband and he wants to share his day with me. So those were some of the indications for me that there wasn't enough of that focus of how am I making sure to replenish my energy? How am I making sure that I'm conscious of this and that I'm caring for myself and doing what I need to, but also finding those moments throughout the day that I can pause and create moments of replenishment so that I can go home and have my full energy level left and not feel depleted. So those are some of the examples that I heard in my practice. I see one more hand up. I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, Jamie. My question is that is your research anyhow studying the relationship or impact of personal dispositions or the style of leadership on these energy relationships? Because there might be personal differences in these reactions, as well as there might be the leadership style adopted by the leader that might also be affecting these relationships. So was there any thing studied related to that?
Absolutely. So the two styles of leadership that I've studied the most are servant leadership and now positively energizing leadership. And I really want to continue studying positive, energizing leadership in this because I was sharing behaviors around that are things like listening and gratitude and making someone feel seen, heard, and acknowledged. So I think there are styles of leadership we could look at in relationship to vitality. Servant leadership I chose because it seemed to me to be one of the ones that was so oriented to others it could be depleting. But I think there are so many different styles of leadership that we could look at and continue to research and understand vitality's relationship to.
Yeah, so actually my question came from another concept which is very much in these days, which is known as vulnerable leadership, which is, a combination of all these things. So I think as you are talking about, that could also be studied with, in context of your research. Yeah, thank you.
I would love to learn more about it. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for all the questions. I think Jimmy has addressed them very well. So we have seen that your session has gained so much interest and participation from the people here. So now just closing the session, and before we close, I would request Dr. Aisha Sarfaraz, who is joining us from the University of Home Economics in Pakistan, to extend a vote of thanks to the speaker, please.
Thank you, Ria. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Shapiro, for such a truly inspiring session on leader follower vitality as part of the Science of Happiness series. Your insights into how vitality influences happiness and well-being and the factors that either enhance or drain our vitality offered both deep reflection as well as practical wisdom. It was a powerful reminder that we often manage our time, but we forget to manage and restore our energy, which is very important. The way you have seamlessly integrated positive psychology principles such as Sperma 4 model into real-world leadership practices was especially impactful and highly relevant as an employee as well, because many of us could personally relate to the concept of the vitality vampires that you have talked about, which made your talk even resonate more with us. So we really sincerely appreciate the time, the energy, and expertise that you have shared with us, and the vitality which actually resonated through your talk. I would also like to extend heartfelt thanks to the Reiki Foundation, Dr. Reiki and his team, and Claremont University for making this wonderful series possible. I feel fortunate to be a part of this journey and would surely be looking forward to more learning opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. It's really been a joy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Aisha. And hope to see you in the next session. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.